Hello again, everybody. This is Steve. Well, here's the follow-up I promised the other day on Contract Law 201. This is going to be an extended version, and depending on how long this goes, I might go off into a couple other areas and drop out the slideshow. But let's get started with this. This one's going to be man's law versus Yahuwah's. And we're going to cover some ground again, because we got to get these fundamentals. We got to wrap our minds around this fundamental thing, because we're dealing with a great big issue here with this stipend check and what's going on. Things are getting crazy. There's a lot of rioting going on. People are sick of this lockdown. They're sick of their businesses being destroyed, their lives being destroyed, being made unemployed over a virus that nobody can prove. So, we really need to get these concepts down. The first contract covenant Yahuwah Yahusha made was a trust. And trust and contract are the same thing. Trusts are made by contract. Of course, in the Bible it's called a covenant. And yes, I'm a legalist because my Creator is a legalist. He does everything by covenant, as we will see. And we're starting way back at the beginning because, like I say, the foundational principles, wrapping our minds around the foundational principles is everything. If we get to the point where we totally internalize the foundational principles, then when the heat is on and things are coming at you, you're under pressure, then you can realize what's happening and you can operate according to those principles, and it becomes like autopilot. You don't really have to think. And when you've got people intimidating you and everything else, being able to get things done without having to just sit back and think about it's a real plus. So anyway, we'll take a look at the first trust here again. And Elohim said, "Let us make man in our own image, according to our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground." And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim he created him. Male and female he created them. That's Genesis 1:26 and 27. Okay. Here we go. Oh my goodness. There we go. Looks like this mouse is going to give me a little trouble this morning. He who creates owns as a maxim of law. Being that Yahuwah created, he owns. And he did his creation through the agency of Yahusha. So, Genesis 1:28, and Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, "Be fruitful and increase, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over all creeping creatures on the earth." Yahuwah through Yahusha created all that is. To prove that, we're going to go look at John here for a second. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. He was in the beginning with Elohim. All came to be through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be. There again, this is from John 1, verses 1 through 3. And then there's some other citations here from the eSword notes on John 1:3, if you want to confirm that, which I would suggest you take the time to do that. Yahusha made all that is. This is property of the trust. In law, this is called the res. So the rest of the trust is all that was created, including man. So right in the door, beings, you are a man or a woman, you were created, you are the property of Yahuwah. Remember how I keep harping on knowing who you are? You are somebody else's property. That right there, when you wrap your mind around that, you understand you're not a person, you're not an individual, you're not a resident, you're not a taxpayer, you're not a this, you're not a that. You are a child of the Most High. It's plain and simple, period. And if you can hold them to that and not let them trick you into volunteering to be a person or an individual or a resident or what have you, then you've won. You just got to stand your ground. The offer. And Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said, "Be fruitful and increase, and fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over all the creeping creatures of the earth." Elohim said, "See, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed to you. It is for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and every creeping creature on the earth, in which there is a living being, every green plant is for food." And it came to be so. Okay, and it came to be so, right there in Genesis 1:30b. That right there says that it's complete. The contract is ratified, and it's a done deal. Now, it's not said in the text that Adam had any part in the contract. How's that so? What about accepting the trustee beneficiary position in the proposal? Now, let's back up here for a second. Right here. Right here, he was given some instructions. He was made a trustee through these instructions right here. The payoff for agreeing to be that trustee is right here. He's saying, see, I've given you all of this. And so you have Adam, or man, was put in a dual position that is not supposed to take place in under trust law, under man's system. The trustee and the beneficiary are not supposed to be the same, nor are the grantor and the trustee to be the same. Trusts are an artificial fiction in man's world that are used to control. As David Rockefeller said, the trick is to own nothing and control everything. The Rockefellers hide behind over 7,000 trusts, so they cannot be, you cannot put your hands on them, you can't reach them, you can't sue them, because ultimately you run into a trust and you can't penetrate that trust. It is a corporation, which the root word for that is corpse, and that's one of the big differences between what Elohim has here and what he's offering Adam. He's offering him a living trust. He's offering him a living contract, and which it only gets better for Adam. It never gets worse. Elohim does not have to hide behind a dead fiction. Okay, I gotta back up one. So like I said, it's not said in the text that Adam had any part in the contract. How's that so? What about accepting the trustee beneficiary position in the proposal? Adam remained moot. This is called tacit acquiescence. When an offer is presented and one remains silent, one is presumed to accept the offer because he did not refuse it. And very, very important in this world, when you go in front of a judge and he starts yelling at you, his mannerisms saying one things, but the appellate court can only take a look at the record. If you can remain cool and listen to the words above the yelling and the mannerisms, you'll find out that he's giving you an offer. But you're scared, and so you just sit there and keep your mouth shut. Well, then that's take to be a presumption that you've accepted his offer, and you've lost. Right there. This is where one can get into trouble without doing anything. It's important to respond to offers, unequivocally reject them in a timely manner if one does not want what is being offered. When you get an offer in the mail from your credit card company that says, "Dear cardholder, we are going to change the terms of your card, yada, yada, yada." And first of all, are you cardholder or are you man? You see, right there they're trying to get you to answer to an office, an artificial, fictional office. And then they're trying to modify the terms. You have the option of returning that to them and doing what's called an acceptance for value and saying, "Thank you kindly for your offer, but I would like to keep my rates where they're at," and send that back to them within 72 hours so you comply with the Regulation Z of the Truth in Lending Act, and then they can't change your credit card rate. They could, however, cancel your credit card, but that's a risk you take. Maybe they won't. Okay, summary on this. Yahusha created all that is, including man, thereby becoming the grantor. He gave man responsibilities, making man the trustee. He offered man benefits, making man the beneficiary, and man accepted by remaining silent. There was no negotiation. Elohim spoke, making this a unilateral contract in the form of an irrevocable trust. All the elements of a contract are in these few verses. There's a meeting of the minds, an offer, an acceptance, and mutual consideration. The meeting of the minds was Elohim said it, Adam listened to it, did not object. That's a presumed meeting of the minds. When Elohim said it, that was the offer. And the silence was the acceptance. The mutual consideration was in the fact that Elohim said, if you'll do this, this, and this, then I'm giving you this, this, and this. So it was right there's the mutual consideration. Elohim required specific performance on tending to the earth, being a good steward of all that has been made, and for that effort, man was given the beneficial interest of being able to use all the stuff on the earth. Okay, now we're moving on from this. I went through that kind of fast, but I just want to say real quick that Satan is not at all original. He doesn't have an original thought. What he does is he takes and he perverts the things of Yahuwah. He takes the things that Elohim made and he copies them, turns them upside down, inside out, and profanes the holy. Now, Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, in relevant part, says, no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. This is a little bit different in the Articles of Confederation, and one of the reasons that they did away with that, with the Articles of Confederation, is because of the difference, because they wanted to be able to get into a position to be able to make people, the colonists, responsible for the debt. In fact, a contractor is a constitutor is somebody who takes on the debt of another. So the Constitution, replacing the Articles of Confederation, was a scam from the very first. In 1887, when the Organic Constitution was passed, it had the separation of powers, yada, yada, yada. By 1879, the Judiciary Act of 1879 pretty much took away the protections that were given to the people by limiting the courts. And then in, I think it's 1803, is it Marbury versus Madison, when the courts said, well, it's not the Constitution that's the supreme law of the land, it's what we tell you the Constitution means. So already back then they were taking upon themselves more than what they were authorized. See, the Constitution does not have anything to do with you or me if we choose to stay in our office as man or woman under the jurisdiction of the Most High, Yahusha and Yahuwah Elohim. Okay, it's that simple, but it's so hard. There's so much trickery. There's so many men out there that are willing to be violent and violently force their will upon you that it's very, very hard to stay that focused on it. And that's why I'm being redundant with this. But in this contract clause, they can't do away with it. They won't do away with it. They have to have this. This is the basis of the Uniform Commercial Code. The Uniform Commercial Code is a body of international law owned by the United Nations. We spend $260,000 a year, I believe, on copyright fees for using the Uniform Commercial Code, and it's applied through the United Nations Unidroit Treaty worldwide. Any country you go, contract law is basically the same, because guess what? There's only one set of rulers of this world. There's only one owner to this world, Satan. He's got a few minions here and there, but they're all kind of on the same team. Of course, they're always stabbing each other in the back and throwing each other under the bus, but that's the way it is. Contract makes law. Forget about constitutions. Forget about civil rights. Forget about all that stuff. You were given unalienable, meaning you can't even give them away. It's not legal and lawful for you to give them away. Legal and lawful are not the same. That's why I corrected that. It is not lawful. Yahuwah does not allow you to give away your rights. Yet man has tricked you out of them. And therein lies your remedy. Because everything man has done to you falls under the definition of fraud. And a fraud, no matter how old it is still a fraud. There's no statute of limitations on it. Once the fraud is exposed, you can take your remedy. And we will eventually get talking more and more about that. It's called fraud in factum or fraud in the factum, depending on which legal dictionary you look at. But once a fraud, always a fraud. A fraud vitiates everything that comes after it. So there's all kinds of maxims of law that have to do with this. Contracts are important. Contracts are law. Contracts are everything. Contracts are even everything when it comes to our relationship with Yahuwah through Yahusha. Remember, Yahusha made you originally. He made your forefather, of whom you are a direct descendant. Therefore, he owns you also, just as much as he owned Adam. You're another person's slave, bondservant, or another being's bondservant. Therefore, they can't touch you once you understand who you are. And we're starting to get a little bit into the meat of the matter. So, remember, there's 5 elements of contract. Now, I gave you 4 in the last one, and kind of split up to be mutual consent, consent on the one side, consent on the other. But there's 5 elements. The missing element back there was something that would never apply to Yahuwah. It must be for a legal act. And everything Yahuwah does is lawful. Now, lawful and legal do not mean the same thing. Lose that. Forget that. They're not the same thing. That's why we have to go looking for a law dictionary and look up all these words and not take any word for granted. For example, the word include. If you say, Johnny is going to go to the museum with Susie and blah, 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 including Joe, then what that's really saying in legalese is it's saying Johnny and Joe are going. The others are not included. Include is to bind together, to wrap around in legalese. In fact, if you go to the Webster's 1828 dictionary, you'll see that same thing. The word you, when you go in there into the courtroom, the judge says, you are guilty of blah, 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 and you speak up and say, oh, no, I'm not. Well, you just volunteered because the word you is plural. When he says that, he's speaking to everybody in the room. But we don't know these things because we do not look up words. But anyway, a contract, first and foremost, has to be for a legal act. There must be the meeting of the minds. And where they get us is they never disclose. This is where the fraud comes. This is where you can always challenge. At any time, now even after a conviction, you can go back and challenge for a void judgment. A void judgment can be challenged anytime in any courtroom. And the thing is that you challenge on this fraud because they did not disclose to you exactly what the offer was, that there even was an offer, or that there even was a contract. That's their standard operating procedure. You see how these basics, when we start wrapping our minds around them, now we're contrasting and comparing them with the laws of Yah and the legal system of man. And we start to see a little bit of a difference. If we focus in on the laws of Yah, on his righteous contracts, then we start having an understanding of the basic underlying universal principles, and we start wrapping our mind around it. And we can think on our feet. That's where I'm trying to take you with this. And by the way, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. But this is just the things that I've learned over the years, and I'm just sharing it with a bunch of friends. But, you know, if you act on anything that I tell you, you're on your own. You got to do your own due diligence in this. Because, see, they've got all this stuff copyrighted, and if I was to say that this is some kind of a legal remedy or something, they'd come and charge me with practicing law without a license. Because they would presume that I'm operating in commerce, and they would presume that their Uniform Commercial Code, which is copyrighted and their private property, would apply to me. So see, I have to say that. However, under common law, there's a 1925 court case, Supreme Court case, that says the practice of law is the common right of every man. So who are you going to take? The common law is pretty much dead after the 1938 Erie Railroad versus Tompkins case, where law and equity was merged. So, you know, you're not going to really fall back on the common law remedy of saying, yeah, I can practice law, Because to do so, the people with guns that are under the UCC are going to come take you and put you in a cage. So that being said, let's move on. Number 2 is a meeting of the minds. Number 3, there has to be an offer. Whoops, an offer. And the offer is sometimes very, very subtle. You don't even know you're being offered anything. Then there has to be an acceptance. Now, if you don't even really realize that you have an offer in front of you because it wasn't fully disclosed to you that that's what this is, then you get into an acceptance. Well, an acceptance like the acceptance of Adam with Yahuwah was, it was implied, but it was expressed terms. There was no fraud there. Acceptance under man's systems, you don't even know they're making you an offer. You stand there, you do nothing. That's an implied acceptance. It can be through saying nothing. It can be through doing nothing. Either way, acceptance does not necessarily have to be sign on the dotted line. But they'd like you to think that. And when you do nothing and say nothing, that's called tacit acquiescence. Acquiescence is the tacit approval of conduct that might otherwise have provided grounds for an action, but which cannot be objected to if undertaken with the consent of the party affected. Consent may be express or implied, and the one circumstance where consent may be implied is where the party affected, in full knowledge of his rights, takes no action. And there is the rub, in full knowledge of his rights. If they have not told you, if you have never been educated in this, you can go in there and say, hey, I'm an idiot, and you stand a better chance of winning than going in there fighting. In fact, they're not supposed to convict you if you say that. But anyway, that's Collins Dictionary of Law, W.J. Stewart, 2006. Okay, there must be a mutual consideration. That's called a quid pro quo. That's Latin for something for something. I'm going to give you this. What are you going to give me? That is a mutual consideration. So contracts, everything in life is contract, whether we know it or not. We contract with our kids, if we tell them, eat your beans, you can stay up an extra hour. We contract with our spouse, we contract with our boss. Many, many times every day we enter into all these little mini contracts. And when we start dealing with the powers that shouldn't be, we enter into contracts that have far-reaching, life-changing consequences attached to them without even realizing that we're being offered anything, and that our being silent is accepting it. So there's the big deal with this check that they're offering us. There's the big danger. Now, it's lawful for one to accept an offer without receiving the terms, that is, the quid pro quo. This is presumed to be a waiver of rights. Remember, we went back to that definition. Let's go back one more. What did I do? I must have jumped over it. Yeah, there it is. Tacit acquiescence. See in the bottom line there? In full knowledge of his rights, takes no action. Well, if you don't know it, they're assuming that you do know your rights. It's lawful for one to accept an offer without receiving the terms. That is the quid pro quo. This is presumed to be a waiver of those rights. Often, this waiver of rights is done by trickery. That's their biggest thing. They trick you. They trick you into consent. That's called manufactured consent. I did a video on that. And that's what I believe is really going on with this check. They may not even give most of the people in this country a check, most of the businesses a check. Just the fact that they're offering it and everybody's waiting by the mailbox to cash that check means that, they've been given an offer and they've accepted the offer. So what if they didn't receive their part of the deal? They're not enforcing it. You have to know how to enforce your rights to have any rights. Now, misdirection is also known as a red herring. It's often used to slyly attain this waiver. It's when you're up there talking to the judge and he asks you or you ask him a question and he gives you some kind of a garbage answer and goes off and starts talking about something else. Or when the politicians ask what his position is on abortion rights and women's rights, reproductive rights, whatever, and he goes off and starts talking about local pollution, or something like that. That's a misdirection. It's known as a red herring. You throw something else out there, hope they bite at that. So then you get the waiver. If the person doesn't say, the way to do it in court when they do that is objection, non-responsive. Your Honor, would you mind answering my question? And you do that 3 times, you've won. If he doesn't do it 3 times, he's supposed to step down. However, they now openly cheat. Doesn't always work. I did get rid of a judge that way not too long ago. Okay, for example, the COVID, live exercise is causing many to be unemployed and focusing on their financial woes. Reason flies out the window, and all the masses think about is the promised stipend check. Most will never even consider the ramifications of taking the check. Are there hidden terms and conditions? What's the source of the funding? And what strings will be attached? Those things must be considered. And if you happen to mess up and you've already taken it or you've already done something, it's not a fatal error because you were never given a full disclosure. It wasn't all laid out there on the table for you. So you can go back in and through an offer of proof in the form of an affidavit, lay out for them certain things that they can't answer and claim fraud. When they can't answer any one of those things, if you can have 100 things that are completely wrong, but they can answer all those, but one that's right that they can't answer, it'll be presumed that all 100 are right. And that's the power of an affidavit. And we'll be talking more about affidavits in the future, because affidavits are what make the commerce world go round. Okay, Satan has no original ideas. He always steals and perverts Yahuwah's righteous acts. Beware of making contracts with the devil. You probably cannot afford to pay the payoff on the due date. Every contract carries a required performance, and the devil will get his due. So that's that. Now, we got this out of the way. I want to go a little bit further with this today because I told you that Yahuwah is a legalist and he works in covenants, which is another word for contracts. We're going to go over to Genesis chapter 12. That's the next big contract that takes place. I mean, there's some other things that happen in there. There's a big one with the rainbow, back at the flood. There's a few things that happen. Excuse me. But probably the most far-reaching is what starts out here in Genesis chapter 12. Genesis 12:1, and Yahuwah said to Abram, "Go yourself out of your land, from your relatives, to your father's house, to a land which I shall show you." Okay, there's the offer, or there's the conditions, and the offer is, "And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram left as Yahuwah had commanded him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he set out for Canaan. So what just took place right there? Give him a specific performance. Go yourself out from the land, from your relatives. That's what Abram is supposed to give to Yahuwah. And for that, Yahuwah says, "I'll make you a great nation, bless you, make your name great, bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you, and everybody in the earth will be blessed by this." So, the acceptance is, down here in verse 4, so Abram left as Yahuwah had commanded him. It doesn't talk about any kind of negotiation in here. This is an express, very open promise that Yahuwah made to Abraham. And Abraham, or Abram as he was called at that time, accepted the offer because he did what was asked of him. There was no need for any kind of signing on the dotted line. Okay, and I don't know if I can do this, if I remember well enough. It's in 13. Boy, the nice part about this is you guys don't even know I took about a 5-minute break and got my glasses and a Bible out so I could have some notes and it's the magic of video, I guess. Anyway, before we go any further here, I want to reiterate something, or just bring something to your attention. My preferred Bible has, from Genesis 1:1 to Genesis 12, has 9 pages. The one that I'm using right now is a large print King James version. It has 12 pages. Those 12 pages are about 2,500 years, give or take, of man's existence on this earth, the history of that 2,500 years. And it could be longer if we take some of the accounts from the extra biblical or apocryphal texts of how long things really took place in the garden. But the point being is, there's not a lot said. There's a lot of information in those 11 or 12 pages, but there's a lot of things that go unsaid, and it's kind of like it's on a need-to-know basis, and some of that stuff we just really don't need to know. That being said, we also don't need to be jumping to conclusions about what took place and all there. I always, it just kills me when one of these preachers gets on and starts talking about, oh yeah, and Abraham was, he's hanging out at his daddy's house, and they were out having a barbecue, and they're doing this and that and the other thing, and they start filling in all these blanks and making up some kind of a narrative that they know nothing about. That's not allowed. You can't go beyond what's written. And we can't either. We've got to be very, very careful, because the human mind will fill in the blanks, which is one of the psychological tricks that men use to trick us into these contracts. Back to the contract. I'm going to back up since I took a break there. If I can get this thing to work. Oh, got to go this way. Okay, 12:1. Yahuwah said to Abraham, go. 12:4, or 12:2 and 3, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that for you. 12:4, he went. Okay, very, very basic contract. Meeting of the minds, mutual consideration, offer and acceptance. Okay, then if we go up into 13 here, where is it? I think it's still in 12 there, as a matter of fact. Let's see. If we go to, okay, and if we go over here in like verse 7, first of all we should look at verse 4. Abraham left as Yahuwah had commanded him. Then in verse 7, and Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said, to your seed I give this land. Oh, well, here he's adding a benefit to this contract. The contract's already set up here, but he's adding a benefit here. And then Abram continued to move east of Bethel, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now we're going to jump ahead a little bit. And I think we're going to go over to, was it 13:14, I believe? Okay, come on. And after Lot had separated from him, Yahuwah said to Abram, now lift up your eyes, look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see I shall give to you and to your seed forever. And I shall make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then your seed could also be counted. Arise, walk in the land through its length, its width, for I give it to you. So Abraham moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Ekron. Let me look at the King James. I can't understand that. Mamre, Hebron. And there built a slaughter place to Yahuwah. Okay, so here again, the covenant's getting better and better. Now, as a side note, if we go into 14 here, I'll just give you a little tidbit here. And it is, what, 14:13, I believe. And the one who escaped came and informed Abram the Hebrew. This is the first place we hear Hebrew in the Bible. For he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, brother of Aner, and they had a covenant with Abram. Okay, so that's just an interesting little side note. But we're going to go up to, I believe, chapter 15 now. We're looking at how, see, Abram was required to do something, to obey. And Abram obeyed. And as we go along here in chapter 15, verses 1 through 6, we come into something we need to read. After these events, the word of Yahuwah came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great." And Abram said, "Master Yahuwah, what would you give me, seeing I go childless, that the heir of my house is Eliezer of whatever that word is." Let's go over to this one. Eliezer of Damascus. Okay, there we go. Genesis 15:3. And Abram said, "See, you've given me no seed, and see, no one born in my house is my heir." And so you see, the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, "This one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir." Excuse me. And he brought him outside and said, "Look now towards the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them." And he said to him, "So are your seed, so are your children." And he believed Yahuwah, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. Okay? And this verse we come across in the New Testament. You're probably familiar with it. But there again, here's a little bit of negotiation here that Abram's doing. And Yahuwah answers him, and in his righteousness he agrees to make him, well, actually he's just agreeing what he said back here in 12. Because back here in 12 he said, and I'll make you a great nation and bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. He already told him he was going to make him a great nation, but he clarified it there in 15. And this continues on and on. I don't know that we're even going to look at this. Over in 16 verses 11, oh no, that has to do with Ishmael there. 17 is a good place to stop and look right now. We're talking about Abram. "And it came when Abram was 99 years old that Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be perfect." Now, would Yahuwah say, walk before me and be perfect, if we were not able to be perfect? See, nobody can keep it perfect. Only Yahusha kept it perfect. But once we come to it, we are supposed to walk before him and be perfect. That is kind of, what he's requiring of us. However, in the book of 1 John, we find if we do sin, we have an advocate. But this is our standard. This is the target that we're shooting for right here, to be perfect. "And I will give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you." And Abram fell on his face, and Elohim spoke to him, saying, "As for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. And no longer is your name called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, because I shall make you a father of many nations. And I shall make you exceedingly fruitful, and make nations of you, and sovereigns shall come from you. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you, and your seed after you." This is important. Between me and you and your seed after you. So he's going to establish his contract between himself and Abraham, and also with his seed after him. Well, how's that possible? We're going to get up here pretty quick and I'll show you. Your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be Elohim to you and your seed after you. And I shall give you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I shall be their Elohim. And Elohim said to Abram, "As for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout their generations." Now right here I'd like to pause for the naysayers that say, oh, we didn't have anything happening until Moses and Mount Sinai. No, there was definitely a Torah in place. And Psalm, I want to say 119, 142, your word is established forever in heaven. I've got my Bible right here. Let me just go look at that. Psalm 119 is a wonderful book. Every believer should read it monthly, which I don't anymore, but I should. Oh no, it's 89. "Forever, O Yahuwah, thy word is settled in heaven." So there was already a Torah in place. Okay, and here in 17:9, Abram is commanded to guard his covenant, or guard his Torah, and you and your seed after you throughout your generations. "This is my covenant with you to guard between me and you and your seed after you. Every male among you is to be circumcised. And we're going to jump past that now because I don't want to really go into the circumcision thing, open that can of worms. And I'm going to jump through a whole bunch more because I think I'm going to go up here. I think it's 26. I mean, maybe 27. And it's 27. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Yahuwah is amazing. I turned to 26, and that is, in fact, where I want to go. But I paused again, and I took a look, and I should have stopped in 22 because a very, very important thing happens there to our story. And 22 is when, chapter 22 is when, let me go to 22 right here. So it's on the screen. It came to be that after these events, Elohim tried Abram and said to him, Abram, he said, here I am. Take your son now, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as an ascending offering on one of the mountains which I command you. So, we all know this story, and we know that what went on there, that Yahuwah provided a lamb that was stuck in the thickets there. And where are we at here? I think I went too far. And right here, 22:8. And Abram said, my son, Elohim does provide for himself the lamb for the ascending offering. And the two of them went together. And they came to the place which Elohim had commanded him. And Abram built a slaughter place there and placed the wood in order. And he bound Isaac his son and laid him on the slaughter place upon the wood. And Abram stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the messenger, the Malach of Yahuwah called to him from the heavens and said, Abram, Abram. And he said, here I am. He said, do not lay your hand on the boy nor touch him, for now I know that you fear Elohim, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And that became a very, very important thing there, because of this, he was given the ram in the next few verses. And then in verse 15, the messenger of Yahuwah called to Abram a second time from the heavens and said, by myself I have sworn, declares Yahuwah, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, that I certainly shall bless you. I certainly shall increase your seed as the stars of heaven and as the sand on which is on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gates of their enemies, and in your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Do you see what's happening here? Abram was willing to give up Isaac, his only son, after he went through all that turmoil. We all know the story of it, being 99 years old and childless and laughing, and Sarah laughing, thinking that, how could they possibly have a child? But they did, and then Abram was willing to give up that child to obey Elohim. That's a pretty big deal, to be willing to give up your only son. And that's showing a lot of faith in your mighty one, in your Elohim. Because of that, Elohim made this unconditional. And that's where we jump to chapter 26. Now, at this time, Abram's out of the picture, and we're talking about Isaac, okay? And there's a famine in the land, besides the first famine, which was in the days of Abram. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And Yahuwah appeared unto him and said, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell of thee, and sojourn in the land. I'm reading from KJV just to make this easier. Here, so let's go over to KJV for a minute. Verse 3, sojourn in this land, I will be with thee, I will bless thee, for unto thee and unto thy seed I will give these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abram thy father. See, Yahuwah, based upon the willingness to sacrifice Isaac, made an oath to Abraham. Okay, verse 4, I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because that Abram obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Well, right there is the division that we see later on under the quote-unquote Mosaic laws, that there's commandments, statutes, ordinances, and judgments. This is basically the same thing, and another confirmation that there was a pre-Sinai Torah in place. They weren't just thrown down there to figure it out on their own. They were given explicit instructions, as we are today. But the point here is, Yahuwah promised to give a certain thing to Abram and to his seed after him forever. And here he's confirming that he's going to keep his oath, and he's doing it because Abram did walk before him and be perfect to the best of his ability. Now, we know that Abram wasn't perfect, and we know none of us are perfect. We have all sinned before we came to know the promises of Yahuwah and the offer that he's making us. And because of that, we work not to sin. Okay? I hope everybody follows me there. And that's pretty much where I wanted to go. This is, this is the foundation for Israel. And it's been said that the Bible is about Israel and everybody else. It's the story, and it lays everything out. It's very, very, very important. And the next big point is probably in like Exodus 12 with the giving of the Passover. I'm not going to go there. To keep this a little bit concise, I'm going to go real briefly. I'm going to go up into Exodus. I could go in 16 and show where they were given test commandments. The Sabbath was given as a test commandment. I could go to 19 and show where the proposal was to Israel corporately as a nation. Or into 20 where the 10 commandments were given. But you notice here, we're just going to go, where is it? 23, 24. Let's see. I think it's 24. Okay. So in Exodus 24:1, we see that Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, the 70 elders went to worship far off. Moses came and told all the words of Yahuwah, the judgments, and the people answered in one voice, and blah, 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 blah. And he sent the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings. And then look here in verse 24:6. And Moses took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the altar. He took the book of the covenant and read it in the audience of the people, and they said, all that Yahuwah hath said we will do, and be obedient. So they accepted the offer right there from Exodus chapter 20, the giving of the 10 commandments, and the judgments. I believe it's judgments that's mentioned there after the 10 commandments. But this is the blood covenant they accepted. And then he took the blood and sprinkled it on the people. So this is a done deal. This covenant is signed at this point. It's signed and it's sealed in blood. We have a covenant that's sealed in blood with Yahusha. And I had to lay that groundwork to go here to Exodus 31 to show you something else. Now, we're going to go 12 to 17, but you know what? I'm going to go back down here to 20 real quick. I want to just show you. Okay. If you notice here, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahuwah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor the strangers within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made heaven and earth, the sea that's all that's in them. The seventh day he rested. Wherefore Yahuwah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. See, that's a very long answer there. And I believe it is the longest. Yeah, I wasn't sure if the third commandment was. It's kind of a tie. But the fourth commandment is very, very well written out there. There's not a lot that's left to speculation. There's nothing left to speculation there. That is the longest of the commandments, of the 10 commandments. But the interesting part of it is in Exodus 24, the covenant sealed with blood, and then in 31, so if we got 24, there's 6 chapters. 31 would be 7 chapters. So, and 7, 12 to 17. And here we go. There is something else happens here with the Sabbath. Exodus 31:12. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak also thou unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahuwah that doth sanctify you. Now that's noteworthy, because if you're worshiping on a day other than the Sabbath, then you don't know who you're worshiping. It says you keep this as a sign, and I think when you break that down in the Hebrew, it's an ensign or a symbol between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahuwah that doth sanctify you. You know you're asking for sanctification from the Holy One of Israel. Okay, let's go back up here. So we were there, we started in 12. And verse 14, Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whoever doth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, holy unto Yahuwah. Whoever does any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. 31:16. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. Perpetual means ongoing. 31:17. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. See that right there? Last time I checked, forever meant always, never ending. For in 6 days Yahuwah made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. So these verses right here show that this is a separate covenant that is made having to do with the Sabbath. And the thing with this is that you might know who it is that sanctifies you. Okay? And it is Yahuwah. Now, if you're not keeping the Sabbath, then you don't know who it is. You don't know who it is. 18 or 20? It's 20. Or is it 18? Let me go in the Bible here and look before we get all off on a tangent. I do better with books than I do with computers, folks, which is probably a good thing. Yeah, I believe it is 20. Yes, it is. Where do I want to start? I guess about verse 12. 20 and 12. Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbath. So let's back up. Wherefore I caused them to go forth out of the land of Egypt, and brought them into the wilderness. This is Yahuwah speaking through the prophet Ezekiel. And I gave them my statutes, and showed them my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live by them. That's an interesting idiom there, because it says, if you're going to do them, you got to do them all the way. And if you do them all the way, they're going to cause you to have eternal life. Well, the elements of communication that Yahuwah uses are just incredible sometimes. And that's a very good example. Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahuwah that sanctifies them. But the house of Israel rebelled, blah, 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 blah. And then if we go down here to, we got past 13. Let's go down to 18, take a look at it. But I said unto their children in the wilderness, walk ye not in the statutes of your fathers, neither observe their judgments, nor defile yourselves with their idols. Whoa, okay. Now if he's saying that the children weren't supposed to walk in the statutes of their fathers, not him, neither observe their judgments, nor defile themselves with their idols. What does that say about the statutes, ordinances, codes today that man wants us to submit to? Whom should we submit ourselves to? Yahuwah or to the enemy and to the beast system? And it's all here, folks, if we just dig in and find it. 20. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Walk in my statutes, keep my judgments, and do them. And hallow my Sabbaths, and it shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Yahuwah, your mighty one, your Elohim. Notwithstanding the children rebelled against me, they walked not my statutes, neither kept my judgments to do them, which if a man do, he shall live by them. They polluted my Sabbaths. Then I said, I would pour out my fury upon them to accomplish my anger against them in the wilderness. So there, folks, you have it. I've given you enough here to make the tie-in between contract law and its origins, and to show you that you got a couple options out there. You can choose to contract with the beast system, or you can choose to contract with Yahuwah only. And there are many benefits to contracting with Yahuwah. Right here in Ezekiel 20:18, he said, walk ye not in the statutes of your fathers, neither observe their judgments, nor defile yourselves with their idols. We can't be running after the things the world's running after. We can't be putting ourselves in a position where we're contracting away our unalienable rights that aren't allowed for us to contract away. This right here is kind of the verse that would hang on. You know, he's saying, don't do it. Don't walk after their statutes. Don't give up your Yahuwah, your Elohim given rights for some man-granted privileges. We just can't do it. But you gotta know who you are. I'm harping on this, I'm being redundant with it, but it's so important. And if things are going to go down like it looks like they're going to go down, we really need to know these things, folks. We really need to know these things. So, that being said, I want to thank you all for listening, and I will be back soon. I went out and took some pictures yesterday. I'm a horticulturist, and I went out and took some pictures of wild edibles. I'm thinking about showing you how to eat in the wild for free, since they seem to be wanting to drive us into a famine. I'm having some trouble. I don't have a camera. I'm just using a smartphone, and it's giving me some headache. I'm not tech savvy, not at all. And this has been a very big challenge for me to put these slides together, these presentations together. I'm getting better. But now trying to go out with a smartphone and take pictures, I've got 20 or so pictures on my phone that I'm having a hard time emailing because the phone memory's too full and yada yada yada. But if I get them together, I may do something on wild edibles and foraging in the next few days. I would really like to, because I think we all need to learn to get more self-sufficient. See, that's a part of it, is Yahuwah will take care of us, but we have to play our part. You know, we can't just sit, in front of a computer all day. We can't just sit in front of TVs, and we can't just serve the lusts of our flesh. We have to actually get out there and do some things. We have to learn some things. Learn to build things. Learn to do whatever. Work with your hands. Learn to plant things. Learn to grow things. Learn to be a gatherer or a hunter-gatherer once again. Whatever it takes, because we're coming on some hard times. So that's what I kind of think. So I thought I would try to do something there. For example, I've got right here on my desk, I've got a piece of white pine. White pine is very easy to identify, and that the needles are in a follicle. There's 5 needles coming out of the follicle. The nice thing with white pine is it's one of the greatest sources of vitamin C in nature. And there have been people that have sat there and died of scurvy in a field full of pine trees. We're having one of the best sources of vitamin C right there. They could have just made some tea. But see, there's a bunch of stuff like that that could be very helpful. And I'm hoping that I can pull this off and make it happen. But thank you again for listening. Thank you for the phenomenal growth I've had, thanks to Big Sib and to all of you. And I'd ask you to please like, share, subscribe, and leave a little comment for me. I'm trying to push this channel now and to branch off into a few other things. I'm not doing this that I can build it up to make money off of it. I won't ever do that. I may make another channel on horticulture or survival, or I may even start a store somewhere else. But this is all stuff that was given to me for free. And even so, I will never start a channel that would be pay only. If I were to put a Patreon up, it would be just a way for people on my other channels to donate. It would not be anything that I would hold out if you didn't pay me. Life's worth a lot more than money. And I don't really have a lot of needs nowadays. So thank you all for listening, and Yahuwah bless you all. And this is the day of preparation, so please prepare for Shabbat. And I will talk to you next time. Bless you all.